The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and broken promises when I pressed play on my phone at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday that would later be known in our department as the day Miranda learned that walls have ears and phones have memories. The audio was crystal clear, even through the cheap speakers, Miranda's voice cutting through the silence like a blade wrapped in fake concern. "We really need to discuss performance standards," she said to the room full of executives who thought they were about to hear another boring quarterly review. Instead, they heard her say, and I quote, "Some people just aren't leadership material, no matter how hard they try." Unlike my star players who really get it, the silence that followed was so thick you could have sliced it with a corporate credit card. The HR director's pen froze mid-sentence. The CEO's coffee cup hovered halfway to his lips, and Miranda's face went through more color changes than a mood ring in a thunderstorm. But let me rewind to 8 months earlier when I still believed hard work mattered more than golf. Handicaps and the right last name. I was sitting in the same conference room getting my annual review from Miranda, a woman who wore her MBA like body armor and treated management like a contact sport. "Your numbers are solid," she said, barely glancing up from her laptop. "But I need to see more initiative, more leadership presence, more of whatever it was that made her golden boy Derek untouchable, despite being late to everything except happy hour." Derek, who once submitted a project proposal that was literally a Wikipedia page, with the font changed. Derek, who called our biggest client dude in a presentation and somehow got promoted for his authentic communication style. Derek, who Miranda defended like he was her firstborn child, and she was a mama bear with a business degree. Derek, who somehow managed to take credit for my quarterly analysis by simply being the one to present it to leadership while I sat in the back row like a court stenographer. But here's what Miranda didn't know about me. I've been recording conversations since college, not for malicious reasons. Originally, just because I have terrible memory for details and learned the hard way that people love to gaslight you about what was actually said. It started during a group project where my teammates tried to claim I'd never done my share of the work until I played back our planning meeting where they'd literally thanked me for doing the heavy lifting that taught me that documentation beats memory. Every single time it started as a survival mechanism and became my secret weapon. The first recording happened by accident 3 weeks after my review. Miranda called me into her office for what she described as a quick chat about team dynamics. I hit record on my phone out of habit, tucked it into my blazer pocket, and sat down, expecting another lecture about synergy and leveraging core competencies. Instead, I got a masterclass in favoritism, so brazen, it was almost artistic. She started with the usual performance theater. "You know I value all my team members equally." But then the mask slipped, and honestly, some people just understand the big picture better. Derek, for instance, has that natural leadership instinct that you can't really teach. She paused, like she was choosing her words carefully, whereas others might benefit from focusing on their technical skills rather than trying to step into roles they're not quite ready for. The recording was only 12 minutes long, but it contained enough coded language to fill a discrimination lawsuit. Her tone when she talked about Derek warm, encouraging paternal when she talked about me, clinical distant like she was discussing a malfunctioning printer that might need replacing. I listened to it that night in my car sitting in the Safeway parking lot with my engine off and my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't just bias. This was systematic, deliberate exclusion wrapped in corporate speak and delivered with a smile. The way she emphasized technical skills like it was a consolation prize. The way she talked about readiness like it was something I could never achieve no matter how hard I worked. That's when I decided to start paying attention. Really paying attention, because if Miranda wanted to play games, I was going to learn the rules and document every single move. The next recording came 2 weeks later during a team meeting where Miranda announced the new project assignments. Derek got the high visibility client presentation, the one that would put him in front of the C-suite and fast track his next promotion. Sarah got the strategic partnership initiative that came with a corner office and a budget increase. And me, I got data analysis support, which Miranda described as a critical foundational role that would really showcase my attention to detail translation. I got busy work while everyone else got career advancement. But the way she announced it was what made my blood freeze. She did that thing where she tried to make the scraps sound like a gift you're so good with details, she chirped at me. It's really where you shine, and this project will give you the chance to demonstrate that value to the whole organization. I smiled and nodded because that's what you do when your boss is slowly suffocating your career with kindness. But my phone was recording every patronizing word, and the audio quality was pristine. The meeting continued with Miranda outlining timelines and expectations, and I noticed how her language shifted depending on who she was addressing. Derek got aspirational language about growth and visibility. Sarah got strategic terminology about leadership development, and I got operational directives about accuracy and compliance. It was like watching someone speak 3 different languages in the same conversation, each one designed to reinforce a specific hierarchy. If you're the type of person who's ever felt invisible at work, if you've ever watched mediocrity get promoted while your excellence gets ignored, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if this resonates with you, it would mean everything if you hit that subscribe button because this story is just getting started. And you're going to want to see how the house of cards Miranda built comes crashing down. The recordings became my obsession. Not in a creepy way, just methodical, like I was building a case. Which I guess I was every one-on-one meeting, every team huddle, every casual conversation where Miranda thought she was being subtle about her preferences. I documented it all. My phone became a court reporter, taking depositions on corporate bias. And the evidence was overwhelming. Recording number 3 captured Miranda in the break room telling another manager that some people are just natural followers, and trying to push them into leadership roles does everyone a disservice. She was talking about me specifically because I just suggested a process improvement that would save the company $15,000 annually. Recording number 4 captured Miranda telling Derek privately that she was grooming him for her role when she got promoted to regional director. This conversation happened right after a team meeting where she told everyone that advancement would be based purely on merit and performance. Recording number 5 was Miranda explaining to the office manager why Derek needed the corner cubicle with the window, because people in leadership development needed environments that fostered creative thinking. Recording number 6 was her declining my request for professional development training because the budget was tight, while simultaneously approving Derek's attendance at a leadership retreat in Napa Valley. Recording number 7 was her explaining to Sarah why she deserved the client-facing role, because some people are just naturally better with relationship building, while others are more back-office oriented. The phrase back-office oriented was delivered with the kind of tone usually reserved for discussing invasive medical procedures. Recording number 8 captured her telling the finance director that my work was solid, but I lacked the executive presence necessary for client interactions. This was particularly rich since I'd been successfully managing our largest account for 6 months, while Derek was learning how to spell the client's name correctly. Recording number 9 was Miranda discussing budget allocations and mentioning that some team members were at their compensation ceiling while others had significant growth potential ahead of them. Recording number 10 was her explaining to HR why certain employees needed different types of recognition. Some people are motivated by public acknowledgement, she said, while others prefer private feedback. Meaning Derek got announced achievements while I got quiet nods. Recording number 11 captured her telling another department head that she needed to be strategic about which employees got exposure to senior leadership because not everyone was ready for that level of responsibility. Recording number 12 was the jackpot, a 23-minute conversation between Miranda and her boss discussing the department restructure where she literally said, and I can quote this because I've listened to it 47 times, "We need people who can grow with the company long term, not just solid performers who've hit their ceiling." The way she said solid performers made it sound like a terminal diagnosis, and when her boss asked her to clarify, she spelled it out with the subtlety of a brick through a window. Some employees are great at execution, but they don't have that X factor for leadership. Derek has it. Sarah's developing it, but others? Well, they're valuable in their current capacity. The beautiful thing about digital recordings is they don't lie. They don't forget. They don't get influenced by time or selective memory. They just sit there on your phone like tiny truth grenades, waiting for the right moment to explode. And that moment came sooner than I expected because Miranda made a crucial mistake. She got comfortable. Comfortable people get sloppy, and sloppy people leave evidence. The mistake happened during our quarterly all-hands meeting. Miranda was presenting the team's achievements to the entire department, plus several executives from corporate, including the VP of Human Resources. The presentation was going smoothly. Miranda clicking through slides full of metrics and milestones, taking credit for the team's work in that way managers do. But then she got to the individual recognition slide, and something shifted in her tone when she talked about Derek's contributions. Her voice warmed like she was discussing a favorite nephew. "He really embodies our core values of innovation and leadership," she said, beaming at him. Like he'd just cured cancer instead of finally turning in a project on time. She went on about his initiative, his fresh perspective, his natural ability to rally the team, conveniently forgetting that most of his initiatives were actually my suggestions presented through him because he had better access to leadership meetings. But when my achievements appeared on screen, the energy flatlined. She mentioned my work with all the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. Solid analytical support that really helped drive our data-driven decision-making process. Solid. There was that word again, like a brand burned into my professional forehead. She spent 30 seconds on Derek's accomplishments and exactly 8 seconds on mine. Timed it later when I was transcribing the recording. But the real gift came during the Q&A when someone from corporate asked about succession planning and professional development. Miranda's answer was so revealing, so perfectly incriminating that I almost felt bad for how easy she was making this. "We're really focused on identifying high-potential individuals," she said, "people who demonstrate natural leadership qualities and strategic thinking skills. Some team members excel in these areas while others provide excellent operational support. Both are valuable but in different ways." The executive pressed further, asking specifically about advancement opportunities for all team members, not just the obvious candidates, and Miranda's response was a masterpiece of discriminatory language disguised as thoughtful management philosophy. "Well, we have to be realistic about fit," she said. "Some people are just better suited for certain types of roles, and we do everyone a disservice by pushing square pegs into round holes. Derek and Sarah have shown they can handle increased responsibility and client interaction, while others might be happier focusing on their current strengths." The word happier hung in the air like smoke from a career fire, and I watched the HRVP scribble something in her notebook. That's when I knew the universe was aligning. The meeting ended with the usual corporate pleasantries, but I could see the HR executive lingering, talking quietly with her assistant. Taking notes, that night I sat in my kitchen with a glass of wine that cost more than I should have spent and listened to 6 months' worth of recordings. The pattern was undeniable, consistent, and legally problematic. Miranda had created a system where advancement was reserved for her chosen few, while everyone else got managed into invisible career purgatory. She'd built an entire management philosophy around the idea that some people were destined for greatness, while others were destined to support greatness, and she'd documented it so thoroughly that she'd essentially created a legal brief against herself. But here's what she didn't count on. Some of us, invisible people, are actually paying attention. Some of us document everything, and some of us know exactly what to do when we finally have enough evidence to bury the people who tried to bury us. First, the weekend before I sent the email to corporate, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick on Friday and spent 3 days organizing my evidence. Like a prosecutor preparing for the trial of the century, I created spreadsheets, cross-referenced dates, matched recordings with company policies, and built a timeline that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. I printed transcripts, highlighted key phrases, and organized everything into a binder that looked like it could topple governments. I even researched precedent cases, found 3 similar situations where employees had successfully sued for discriminatory management practices, and noted the settlement amounts, which were substantial enough to buy really nice cars or really nice lawyers. The email to corporate HR was sent at 11:43 p.m. on a Sunday night when the wine had worn off. But my resolve hadn't subject line formal complaint regarding discriminatory management practices and hostile work environment. Attached were transcripts of 12 key recordings, each one time-stamped and annotated with relevant company policy violations. The email itself was 3 pages of carefully worded legal language that I'd crafted with the help of an employment attorney who charged me $200 for a consultation that would later prove to be the best investment I'd ever made. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was nervous, but because I was finally tired of being tired. Tired of watching incompetence get rewarded while my competence got managed. Tired of listening to Miranda's doublespeak. Tired of pretending that her version of leadership was anything more than elaborate favoritism wrapped in corporate buzzwords. The response came faster than I expected. Monday morning at 8:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with an email from the Director of Human Resources requesting an immediate confidential meeting. The tone was professional but urgent. The kind of urgent that suggests someone upstairs just realized they might have a very expensive problem on their hands. The subject line read, "Urgent confidential meeting request," which in corporate speak translates to "holy shit." Someone just handed us a lawsuit with a bow on it. The meeting was scheduled for that afternoon in a conference room I'd never seen before on the executive floor, where the carpet was thicker and the coffee was actually good. The HR director was there, along with a legal representative and a woman with a notebook who introduced herself as an independent investigator. They treated me like I was made of glass and dynamite, which I guess in a way I was. "We've reviewed your submission," the HR director said carefully. "And we take these allegations very seriously. We'd like to walk through the timeline with you and discuss the supporting documentation." Supporting documentation was corporate speak for "holy shit." She actually recorded everything, and now we need to figure out how screwed we are. The investigator was thorough, professional, and clearly expensive, the kind of person companies hire when they know they're about to pay a lot of money to make a problem disappear. She asked detailed questions about each recording, the context, the participants, the specific policy, violations. She took notes like she was writing a novel, and probably was. This was going to be someone's very expensive story about how not to manage people. The legal representative mostly listened, but occasionally asked pointed questions about my recording practices, whether I'd informed participants about being recorded, whether I'd violated any state laws about consent. These were the questions of someone trying to find a technicality to invalidate evidence. But I'd done my homework. California is a 2-party consent state. but all my recordings were made in the workplace during official business conversations with no expectation of privacy. Their policy handbook specifically stated that all workplace communications could be monitored for quality and compliance purposes, a policy that apparently worked both ways. The investigation lasted 3 weeks, during which Miranda continued managing as if nothing had changed. Still playing favorites, still using coded language, still treating advancement like a privilege reserved for her inner circle. She had no idea that her every word was being dissected by professionals who did this for a living. But I could see the stress creeping in around the edges, the way she looked at me during meetings. Like she couldn't quite figure out why I seemed so calm, the way she started being extra careful about what she said when I was in the room. The way she began scheduling important conversations for times when I wasn't available. The paranoia was setting in, but it was too late. The evidence was already in the hands of people who knew exactly what to do with it. During the investigation period, I kept recording. Not because I needed more evidence, but because Miranda's behavior became even more interesting under pressure. She started overcorrecting, praising my work in meetings with exaggerated enthusiasm, asking about my career goals with transparent desperation, trying to rewrite months of documented bias with a few weeks of performative inclusion. It was like watching someone try to unburn a bridge while standing in the ashes. The final recording happened during the investigation period. Miranda called me into her office for what she described as a check-in about my career goals. The irony was so thick you could have choked on it. Here was a woman who'd spent months systematically limiting my career, asking me about my aspirations like she actually cared. The conversation was 22 minutes of Miranda trying to rewrite history, suggesting that maybe there had been miscommunications about my role and responsibilities. Maybe she hadn't been clear about the growth opportunities available to someone with my skill set. Maybe we should explore ways to better utilize my talents. It was a masterclass in covering your ass after someone's already taken a photo. The whole time she spoke, I could hear the fear underneath the corporate speak, the growing realization that she might have made a very expensive mistake, the way she kept mentioning documentation and wanting to make sure we were aligned going forward, the subtle probing about whether I'd discussed my concerns with anyone outside the department. She was fishing, trying to figure out how much trouble she was in. But I just smiled and nodded and let my phone record every desperate word, because sometimes the best revenge is just being patient enough to let people hang themselves with their own rope. The results of the investigation were delivered to me on a Friday afternoon in the same conference room where this all started. The HR director looked like someone who'd just gotten a very large bill that she was going to have to explain to her boss. The independent investigator was professional, but I caught her suppressing what might have been a smile when she delivered the findings. The legal representative looked like he was already calculating settlement amounts. We found substantive evidence of discriminatory management practices, the HR director said, using the kind of language that means lawyers are about to get very rich. The recorded conversations clearly demonstrate a pattern of disparate treatment based on subjective criteria that appear to correlate with protected characteristics. The investigator leaned forward. What we found was systematic exclusion from advancement opportunities, differential application of performance standards, and the creation of a hostile work environment through coded discriminatory language. In layman's terms, she added, your boss was playing favorites and documenting it so thoroughly that she built our case for us. She went on to explain that they had found 14 separate policy violations, ranging from discriminatory language to failure to provide equal advancement opportunities. They'd interviewed other team members who corroborated the pattern of favoritism. Several people had similar stories about being passed over for Derek or Sarah, about having their ideas appropriated, about being managed into corner roles while others got fast-tracked. The legal representative cleared his throat. The company is prepared to offer a comprehensive resolution that includes financial compensation, policy changes, and structural reorganization of the department to prevent future occurrences. Comprehensive resolution was legal. Speak for, we're going to pay you a lot of money to not sue us into bankruptcy. The number they offered was more than my annual salary, enough to take 6 months off and figure out what I actually wanted to do with my career, enough to move to a different city or start my own consulting business, enough to never have to pretend that incompetence deserved respect ever again. But the money wasn't even the best part. The best part was the look on Miranda's face when she was called into HR that Tuesday morning. The best part was watching Derek realize that his golden boy status had evaporated overnight. The best part was seeing the entire department dynamic shift when people realized that playing favorites had actual consequences. The best part was watching Miranda clean out her office. 3 days later, her termination was announced as a mutual decision to pursue new opportunities, but everyone knew what that meant. She'd been caught red-handed playing favorites, and the recordings had made her defense impossible. Derek was transferred to a different department where his natural leadership instincts could be more appropriately challenged. Translation: he got demoted to a role where he couldn't coast on charm and nepotism. Sarah kept her role but lost the corner office attitude that had made her Miranda's second favorite child and me. I got offered Miranda's position, which I politely declined because sometimes the best way to win is to walk away entirely before the company politics turn you into the thing you were fighting against. The exit interview was conducted by the same HR director who'd handled my complaint. She asked standard questions about my experience, suggestions for improvement, overall satisfaction with the resolution process. But then she asked something that caught me off guard. "Do you think the recordings were necessary?" she said, clearly struggling with the ethical implications. Couldn't. This had been resolved through normal channels. I considered the question for a long moment, thinking about all the times I tried to address concerns through proper channels. All the times I've been told to be patient, to focus on my technical skills, to understand that advancement takes time. All the times my legitimate complaints had been reframed as attitude problems or lack of leadership presence. All the times the normal channels had led me right back to Miranda's office where my concerns died. Quiet. Deaths. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "When the normal channels are controlled by the people creating the problem, you have to find new channels." The recordings weren't about gotcha moments. They were about documentation, because some people will only change their behavior when they realize their words have consequences, and sometimes the only way to get justice is to let people's own words condemn them. She nodded like she understood, but I could see her making mental notes, probably about updating the employee handbook to address recording policies, probably about training managers on coded language, probably about the legal exposure that comes with treating employees like disposable assets. Walking out of that building for the last time felt like shedding a skin that had grown too tight. The security guard who'd seen me trudge in every morning for 3 years nodded with what might have been respect, or maybe just recognition that some battles are worth fighting even when the odds seem impossible. Especially when you have the patience to document every single thing that went wrong and the recording equipment to prove it. The Uber driver who picked me up asked if I'd had a good day at work, and for the first time in months, I could honestly say yes, though probably not for the reasons he was expecting. 6 months later, I started my own consulting firm specializing in workplace equity and documentation practices. Turns out, there are a lot of people who need someone who understands how favoritism works, how to document discrimination, how to build cases that companies can't ignore. I keep Miranda's business card in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that systems only work when someone holds them accountable, and sometimes that someone has to be you. Some fights are worth having. Some systems deserve to be challenged, and some people need to learn that treating employees like disposable resources comes with a price that's higher than they ever imagined paying. Thanks for sticking around, you corporate warriors. If this resonates with your own workplace battles, hit that subscribe button, because we're building a community of people who refuse to accept that mediocrity should be rewarded while excellence gets managed into invisibility.